Good morning, culinarians. Today we're going to go over chapter 18 on poultry. Keep in mind when we go over this chapter, if you need to take notes, highlight stuff, I'll be pulling from the book here. Once we get finished with the lecture, talk about this stuff, we'll be in the kitchen breaking down chicken, trussing chicken, and cooking chicken. So for chapter 18, starting on page 534, identification of poultry, identification and composition of poultry. Poultry, just like meat, 75% water, 20% protein, up to 5% fat in poultry. Maturity and tenderness of the bird. You have your white meat and your dark meat. Okay, the dark meat has more of the fat in it. Then the light meat, then the breast meat. Your dark meat is your legs and thighs. Your white meat is your breast and wings. You have the maturity of the bird. It's a major part of selecting which bird you want, either a young bird or an old bird, depending on what you're going to do with the poultry when you go to cook it. Page 534, they talk about free-range chicken. Free-range chicken. Free-range chicken is basically what the phrase implies. It's not caged. It's allowed to run free. One of the really great things I saw on a farm just a couple summers back when we were doing our farm table class, we visited a local farm and they were raising free-range chickens. It was very cool the way they were doing it. When we pulled up to the farm, they had this huge tent out in the middle of the field. It's probably about a 20 by 20 tent, maybe a little bit bigger. But that tent was out in the middle of the field. As you pulled up, part of the field was green and part of the field was not so green. So when we took a tour of the farm, the farmer explained that he kept his chickens inside this tent, and every several days he'd pick the tent up and move it down this farm. Well, what the chickens were doing, the chickens were running around in this area, which they were free range because they weren't locked up anywhere. They were going around and they were eating the bugs and all the stuff in the ground. He had water and some food in there, but for the most part, the chickens would wander around. Well, after they ate the bugs and stuff like that, of course, they fertilized the ground that they're on. He'd pick it up and move it. Well, what was happening was the chickens were eating all the bugs and all the pests and stuff that were in the ground that would get onto the plants. And then the natural fertilizer would naturally fertilize the ground. So it was literally, you could see half the field was green, half was ungreen, just because of natural fertilization. So for that farm, he had natural free-range chickens because the chickens were walking around. It's very interesting. You also have a term, organic free-range chicken. Keep in mind when you read stuff that says organic, natural, there are certain stipulations and guidelines that people have to follow for organic. Okay, can it still have some sort of stuff in there? Yeah, unfortunately it can, because there's that gray area within organic label that is put on things. But the USDA, if they label something organic, it has to go through certain processes. Page 535, we talk about the light meat and dark meat. Light meat, of course, breast and wings, tend to cook a little bit faster. Dark meat, legs, drumsticks, or thighs, they have more fat, more connective tissue. Whenever I'm cooking with poultry, I'd rather go for a chicken thigh than a chicken breast, only because there's more fat in the thigh, and I think it makes for a little bit juicy product than the breast meat does. The dark color of the meat due to the protein called magolin. Cooking whole birds. Some of the things with cooking whole birds, major problem with roasting poultry is legs and thighs and doneness. A lot of times if you're cooking a whole bird, you want to kind of separate the legs and thighs away from the body, so it cooks a little bit more evenly. A lot of times when you're cooking the whole birds, um, the breast meat and stuff gets cooked first and tends to dry out, and the legs and thighs that are bundled up real tight tend to not cook as well. Um, Basting, if you're basting, always use fat to baste, okay? Fat will give it flavor, fat will give it moisture, okay, as opposed to using water soluble. So whenever you're basting, make sure you always baste with fat. Barding, of course, we cover barding in the meat chapter. Barding, covering the breast with thin layers of some sort of fat. I had one student working here, and he was working in this restaurant, and they used to barter on their chicken dish. What they do is they take their chicken breast, stuff it, and then put layers of bacon on there. What's bacon? Bacon's primarily a lot of fat on there. So they roast it off, and that chicken breast becomes so moist because of all that fat from bacon on the breast. Bottom page 535, get into inspections and gradings of chickens. Like most meat, poultry is inspected and graded. It's inspected for human consumption, and you have your different types of grading. On page 536, you see the little inspection sticker there. That inspection sticker, just like meat, inspections guarantee wholesomeness for human consumption. Okay, so when it has that inspection sticker on there, that means it's fit for human consumption. If it doesn't have that sticker on there, more than likely it goes into some sort of animal food product. Grading on poultry. You have grading. Grading represents the quality of the different types of poultry. With grading, you have A, B, and C. Grading on poultry. It's based on the shape, amount of flesh, fat, pin feathers, skin, blemishes, bruises. It's part of the grading of the A, B, and C on the poultry. Classifications and market forms of poultry. You got the kind, you got the class, you got the style. The kind is the species, the class is the subdivision of the species, and then the style, is it live, is it killed, is it whole, is it cut up into parts? Usually, if you're working in a restaurant, you're either going to get the whole chickens or the cut up pieces of chicken. Refrigeration, make sure you keep chicken cold at all times, either frozen or in your walk-in cooler below 41 degrees. Different types of chickens they talk about. You got your rock Cornish hens, your fryers, your broilers, your roasters, your capons. Addition to a common class of chicken, you got your poison chicken. You got your turkeys, you got your ducks, you got your geese. Those are wild game birds. Now, when they mention wild game, just like in beef, if you're purchasing duck and goose, which is considered wild game, your manufacturer, whoever you're buying your product from, isn't going out to some field and shooting a duck or a turkey. You know, ducks and turkeys are farm raised. So just keep that in mind that they're not wild. Page 537 gets into breakdown of different types of poultry. You got your chickens, turkeys, ducks, goose, guineas, and pigeons. Under chickens, you got rock Cornish hens, special breed of young birds, very tender and delicate. You got your capons, which are castrated male poultry. You got your hens or fowl, which are mature female poultry. Down the bottom, page 537, you got your guineas, young guineas. It's a relative of the pheasant. If anybody has pheasants, very good eating. You also got pigeons or squabs, very young pigeons, light, tender meats. Page 538 has a picture here of different types of birds you can get. You guineas, your squabs, your quails, your partridges, your pheasants, different types of birds on there. Page 539, you get into your ratties, R-A-T-I-T-E-S, which is your ostrich and emus. Okay, very good eating. Usually when I cook ostrich and emu, I'll cut it up and grill it just like a steak. If you've never had ostrich and emu, it tastes just like a piece of filet mignon, and you can cook it, medium rare. It's very good. So if you've never tried it and you ever go out to a restaurant and have it, I definitely take a chance and try it. It's very good eating. Page 540, getting to handling and cooking procedures of the poultry, fresh poultry. Ideally, if you get really fresh poultry in, you want to use it within 24 hours. Most of the poultry you get in has already been brined. It should come in on some ice, and it's good for a few days. But if you get really fresh poultry within 24 hours, if you have, if you ever buy fresh organic poultry from the farmer's market, you'll notice it comes in frozen. The reason why it comes in frozen because it's so fresh. If they get their poultry and slaughter it, they got to use it within 24 hours. So if you're getting fresh organic free-range poultry from the farmer's market, it's going to be frozen because that way it preserves it a little bit longer. Down on the bottom page 540, get into large birds. Large birds, for doneness, internal temperature, make sure you cook them up to 165. Some of the larger birds, like when you get into turkeys and the really large birds, you want to cook them up to at least 180 for the larger birds. Different smaller birds are usually a little bit more juicy, more tender. The larger birds tend to dry out a little bit more. A lot of times the larger birds, especially with poultry, tend to be older birds. Don't confuse that with turkeys. Turkeys a different breed, but if you look at large chickens, the larger they are, usually the more older they are, and the more tough they are. Page 541, you get into trussing. Trussing is tying up the legs and wings. We'll go over trussing in the kitchen. I'll show you guys how to truss a bird in the kitchen. After we get finished trussing it, we'll break it down. But on page 541, it shows a way to truss your bird. Also on lib guides, if you look on there, I'll have a video on there on how to truss chicken properly. I also put a video that I've done to how to truss the chicken properly on your Moodle site. Page 542, it shows how to break down a chicken. What they're doing here is breaking it down into 8-cut chicken. You got 2 breasts, 2 legs, 2 thighs, 2 wings. Next couple pages, 544, 545, getting different types of breaking down chicken. When we get in the kitchen, we're going to break down chicken, and we're going to break it down in 8 cuts. It's technically going to have at least 9 pieces because you get the 8 cuts you're using. Then you take the back off. The back off is the 9th piece, but it's generally called 8-cut chicken. Once we get down, I'll show you how to we'll do an airline breast out of one of them, and on the legs, we'll do a lollipop on the legs. I'll show you how to do that. But that's it on the lecture of chicken, chapter 18. Remember, testing time. Use your notes from this lecture. Use your notes from the book. Keep your tests. We got the final coming up. Hopefully you've saved all your tests and use that as your study guide. Thank you.